what I did is I pushed it back into my very subconscious, but it's not like I deleted them. So if I was a phone, my data is full and I can't accept any more things and I have to get rid of this data or I can't take on any more pictures. And what I want to do is take all the memories in and allow this room within myself and in my heart to love and do things unconditionally and make sure that I am offering the best advice that I can to my daughter from both sides, and then she learns to choose the way she needs to instead of passing on a trauma response and telling her that's the appropriate behavior.
Right.
And so I'm trying to get rid of all of these nasty weeds. I'm trying to like pull them out of this garden and uproot it all. And so I have more room for those emotions that I know I'm going to have from her. Yeah. And so I know you had mentioned, you know, you have stuff that you're dealing with and this other stuff. And somehow you have to like simultaneously get this stuff out while putting new, fresh emotions in, which is a lot. It's just a lot.
It is.
It's just a lot for you. Also, meanwhile, you're writing and helping all these other moms and dads. Oh, forgot. I was going to mention. So something, again, I really like that you put couples together. My friend, Alicia, who had told me about you, something I love about her is sometimes we'll just talk about what's going on and, you know, we'll talk marital life, whatever. And she is so good. Her and her husband are so good about talking things out.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll talk to her in the morning, and then if I talk to her in the evening, she's like, oh, yeah, and we talked about that, and this is how it went. And I'm like, oh, my gosh, you're my hero. Like,
they are precious.
They are precious. They're amazing. But she had mentioned that your boot camp had helped so much kind of prep them and help them talk through certain tough things. Like, it almost like they were prepared for it. So when it did happen, they said, hey, this was this thing that we kind of discussed. And the way I see it, almost gave him like an intro to have that discussion, have that conversation, instead of, you know, where I struggle is like, how do I even bring this up? How do I, you know, whatever, you go through all your things.
Yeah.
And I just admire that in her. And so I love her. I love Matt. I love that this is the kind of, I don't even know what to call it, but like, this is what you do for people.
No, I love that.
This is what you do, and you were born to do it. Like, the way you speak about it is so beautiful. Like, there's like an innocence of a child of how pure it is.
I love that. I do. I love it. It's really interesting. So after I had my third baby, I decided I wanted to be a doula. So a doula is like a birth support person. But I had 3 little babies, and so I was like, that's not going to work. So after I had my 4th one, I found out that you could teach classes, and I was like, oh wow, I'll do that. I'll teach classes until I can be a doula. And I figured I would like teaching classes. Like, I figured that would be a fun thing to do, but I didn't realize that I would love it the way that I do, and that it would be like so like magical, like such an amazing, just.
And it's rewarding too.
It is. It is. And I think it's like, I love the babies, that's why we're here. Right.
Yeah.
But I really I love the relationships. I love watching the couples grow closer together. Like, that to me is just like so special, because then that sets them up well for parenthood and to raise this little person. And so it's really interesting. And and ironically, like, douling is like the least of what I've done over the years. I worked with a midwife for a lot of years, assisting at birth. So I've been to a lot of births, but not as a doula for most of them. But I love it. It's like, I hope I get to teach forever and ever, because
that's so amazing. That's so amazing. It's funny, we talked about how very early on, how like the beauty of birth and giving birth isn't necessarily portrayed in like social media or the culture or the movies. It's more like, you want a brace, it's an emergency, then it's really expensive, then it's really time, occupies a lot of time, which is all kind of true at a certain extent. But we don't necessarily see, and so far in our culture, our like Hollywood and movies were the example of things of how people live their life, which isn't true because it's Hollywood and so, but whatever. But that's kind of what we look at. First when we were little, we watch the Disney movie, so we think we're going to be a princess, and then somebody, usually like a family member, dies, and then it's like, oh, I will survive on my own. I don't know. And then you watch more Hollywood movies.
True. You're like, what in the world?
It's true. It's like, Mufasa dies and Simba's like, let me figure it out. Bambi's mom dies and he has to figure it out. Like all the princesses' moms are dead somehow and they're just on their own. They got to figure it out. So as a kid, you're like, you know what? I'm going to figure it out and I'll slay my own dragon. But we look for that as an example.
Yeah.
And then you continue watching these movies and you see relationships. So you kind of base your relationships off of that. You're like, oh, well, that's what dating is like. And that's what marriage is like, whatever. But that's our examples. If you're lucky, I think if you're lucky and you have great parents who set great example of love and marriage and parenthood, I think that's the most special thing you can give somebody, because then you see it right there and how it actually works.
Yeah.
Because what we see on TV isn't real. And most of the time doesn't match real life. Right. But that was our example. And so it kind of shapes your reality to be that. And then when you're surprised that it's not that, or you want it to be that, I think sometimes we see something being negative and we almost crave for it to be like that because that's what we saw and that's what we expected. And so birth isn't portrayed as this beautiful thing and this reunion of mom and baby. Babies are in you this whole time, and then finally you get to meet this baby that you were supposed to be with. And it's sad. Although I think what's cool now is that the culture's kind of swinging from only Hollywood being the big stars. But at first, I used to cringe at the word influencer because I'm like, what? Like, come on. Come on. Yeah. Do you know that account, Influencers in the Wild?
No.
It's an Instagram account where somebody posts of like somebody else recording somebody else doing like a TikTok dance, and they're just like,
oh, that's hilarious.
Quietly. I'm going to send it to you because you're going to love it.
That sounds amazing.
It's so funny. It's just like people dancing, but there's no music because they're whatever.
Right.
Yeah, it's so funny. But that is where the culture is swinging. And so these micro influencers who are like mini moms are like celebrities, and they're saying like, hey, this is actually how I did my birth, and they have these mom followers who are following them to maybe do it a certain way. And so in a way that's kind of cool because it's opening up, instead of like the 5 celebrity moms that we all kind of look up to be how to be a mom, which they do it very differently, to okay, how are these more real moms? I mean, it's still Instagram, it's still filtered, it's still, you don't get to see, sure, but it's not as big of a production as Hollywood is. And so there is some reality in it. And you can almost try to find other examples of things that, you can connect to.
Yeah.
But I still think, I wish, and maybe it's just from my trauma, but I wish every kid could have a really good family unit of like parents who love them, or, whatever, like just feeling love and never feeling like they have to compete for love, feel like they have to attain a degree or a job title or whatever, or fold towels a certain way, or make eggs a certain way, whatever it is that is your triggers. Like, sometimes I love who I am, and I wouldn't change anything because I am where I am and I love where I am. And I think all the things I had to do was to learn how to be a great mom for my daughter, Paisley. Yeah. At first I thought all these things were my route. But then I had a baby, I was like, oh my gosh, all these things were happening for me to learn how to be now a mom. This is now I'm still my own person, but this is her path and my path,
Yeah.
And so all these things are kind of coming together, but I just want to, I don't know. You get it.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's, other things that they didn't tell you before you had kids was that you are figuring yourself out as yourself, as you're also figuring yourself out as a mother. Yeah. And like you said, like you're still you. So you're like, being a mother isn't your whole identity, but it also is in a way, because now you have this new role, you have this huge responsibility is what it is.
Yeah.
You have this huge responsibility to raise a person who can go out in the world and be a good human. and so like, and then you're also, but you're evolving, like you yourself are also evolving along with this. And in a way, like, I don't know how else to, but your kid's kind of along for the ride, but you want that ride to be like this great ride, not this like trauma-ridden ride. It's really, I think it's hard. And I think like for the most part, we're all doing the best we can. And we learn as we go, and we tweak things as we go, and we change things that don't work. And we try this and we say, oh, that was bad. And we try this and we say, oh, that works, until that didn't work anymore. And so you do something else. And so like, it's this ever evolving thing. It's not just like, this is how you do it and this is how we'll do it forever, because that's not how we are as humans. And then like also trying to remember like to still just be yourself and be true to yourself while you're also being true to your children and your partner, and you have a job that you let, like there's just so many
moving parts.
Yeah, so many moving parts.
Yeah.
And I think that, and there are going to be times when something slips because something else takes priority, and then something else will take priority while this thing is moving on its own for right now. And they're just evolving, moving parts constantly.
And that's what's so interesting. I think you're such a great example of, I think before we hopped on, we kind of discussed how